What if your reality didn't exist until the moment you observed it? This seemingly simple question has the power to shake the foundations of everything you believed about the world. Since childhood, you've been taught to think of reality as solid, fixed, and immutable, a stage on which you simply act. But what if, in the silence between one glance and the next, nothing was truly defined? What if the entire universe were just a tapestry of possibilities, waiting for the instant your consciousness decides what will be woven? The shock of the invisible begins here. The matter you touch, the path you walk, even the encounters that seem casual, all are born from a hidden, mysterious field that escapes common logic. This field isn't a cold, sterile void, but a quantum vacuum, an invisible ocean saturated with potential, where infinite waves of reality await the command of your gaze. It is like a cosmic library where all possible books already exist, but only the one you decide to open transforms into a lived narrative. Science, even if reluctantly, has already touched upon this secret. Quantum physics experiments have revealed that the presence of an observer alters the outcome. A particle, which could be many things at once, collapses into a specific form only when it is measured, only when it is seen. But here's the point. It's not just a particle in a lab that obeys this mystery. Your entire life follows this same sacred logic. The invisible is not an absence. It is a continuous gestation, like a cosmic womb ready to give birth to new realities. You are not a passive spectator before a fixed stage. You are the invisible conductor before a symphony of still dispersed waves. Every thought, every emotion, every intention acts as the baton that decides which notes will be heard, which possibilities will transform into palpable reality. While the common world believes that life is a fixed destiny, the quantum field reveals that life is malleable, mutable, dancing, always waiting for the gesture of your consciousness. Imagine for a moment that before you there is a hidden garden. In it, millions of seeds rest in the silence of the invisible earth. Some seeds could blossom into joy, others into scarcity, some into healing, others into pain. But none of them rise on their own. They await the moment when your gaze, like light, like water, like a silent summoning, decides which seeds will germinate. This garden is your life, and the choices of focus you make every day are the rays that activate or suffocate each sprout. The mystery is this: reality does not happen without you. The universe is not a blind machine. It is a living field that responds to your gaze, your feeling, your belief. Every time you fix your consciousness on something, you give shape to what was once just a wave. Every time you insist on a vision, you strengthen that line of reality. And every time you dare to change your focus, the field rearranges itself to respond to the new command. Today, you are called to awaken to this truth. Reality is not fixed. It is fluid. It is not destiny. It is creation. It is not an imposition. It is a response. The shock of the invisible is not meant to frighten you, but to free you from the prison of passivity. Because if life waits for your gaze to exist, then you are not a hostage. You are a creator. You are not a victim of fixed circumstances, but the author of infinite lines of possibilities. Allow this mystery to envelop you now. Every breath you take opens doors in the field. Every deep silence connects you to the vacuum that contains everything. As you listen to these words, know, the quantum field is already responding to your inner state. Today, your gaze creates worlds. The universe is not a rigid machine, but a living symphony of waves vibrating in all directions. These waves represent pure possibilities, unchosen paths, futures not yet written, encounters that may or may not happen. At the heart of this symphony, there is a deep secret. Nothing becomes real until you observe it. This is the essence of the observer effect. Your consciousness is the invisible maestro that decides which notes will be played, which melodies will emerge from the silence of the field. When you turn your attention to something, that something solidifies. What was a wave becomes a particle, What was probability becomes experience. What was just a distant echo in the quantum vacuum transforms into present reality before you. This isn't just a cold scientific theory, it is the intimate pulse of your own life. Every time you focus on an emotion, an idea, or a vision, you are collapsing lines of reality. Your mind is not just a reflection of the world, it is the lens that creates it. Think of the universe as an orchestra awaiting a conductor's signal. Without the baton, all the instruments remain silent, holding the potential for infinite music. But the instant the conductor raises their hand and gives the command, the sound waves a line, harmony is born, and silence transforms into music. So it is with your consciousness, the invisible gesture that awakens a whole universe from nothing. The observer effect is the reminder that you were never a mere spectator. You have always been the regent of a cosmic symphony. This power, however, carries a solemn truth. Everything you focus on grows. Everything you insist on observing becomes more solid. If you look at life with eyes of fear, scenarios of fear collapse around you. If you choose to observe only scarcity, the seeds of scarcity blossom in your experience. But when you dare to observe with confidence, hope, and gratitude, the field responds with new creations. You are always collapsing realities, even if you are not conscious of it. Now is the time to awaken and choose to observe with intention. It's not just about theory or abstract concepts. You have experienced this countless times. When you were in love, it seemed like the whole world shone in different tones, as if life responded to your inner state. When you were hurt or trapped in pain, the world seemed grey, as if all roads led to the same weight. It wasn't the universe that changed on its own. It was your gaze that determined which version of the universe collapsed before you. The observer effect has manifested in your life much more than you imagine. Now, feel the call. You have the power to alter, here and now the line of reality you are living. By changing your focus, you change your experience. By altering your attention, you rewrite destiny. By understanding that you are not a victim of the collapse, but the protagonist of it, you assume the role of conscious creator. The universe is always ready, like a blank canvas, awaiting only the touch of your consciousness to paint new worlds. And remember, not observing is also a choice. The directionless void allows old patterns to keep repeating, old cycles to remain intact. But the intentional gaze, charged with presence and purpose, opens new windows of reality. The observer effect is proof that, in the silence between thought and the world, there is a sacred space where you are called to decide what note will be played, what wave will be chosen, what particle will become your life. The entire universe awaits the command of your gaze. Today, you can choose to observe differently, and thus, collapse a higher version of yourself and of reality. The quantum field is always ready to offer new realities, but there is something that keeps most people imprisoned, the old repetitive gaze, conditioned by the past. It's as if many lived within an invisible cell, without iron bars, but with walls built by crystallized beliefs, memories of pain, and repeating patterns. This prison is not made of matter, but of observation, always looking in the same way, at the same scenarios, with the same lenses of fear, doubt, and limitation. Have you noticed how stories repeat themselves? Different relationships always end with the same outcome. New situations always bring the same feeling of frustration. Paths that seemed promising end up leading to the same point of discouragement. This is not a coincidence. It is the effect of the old observer. It is the conditioned gaze that, by habit, insists on collapsing the same probabilities, as if only a small circle of the infinite were available. The old observer becomes a prisoner of their own attention. Imagine a person who always walks through the same labyrinth. The walls don't change, the curves are predictable, and each step seems already written before it is even taken. This labyrinth is not in the external world, but in the way of observing. He who looks only with the eyes of the past recreates the past in every instant. The fear of failure generates more failures. The expectation of pain generates more pain. The disbelief in miracles keeps the quantum field closed to miracles. The old observer is like someone who, even in the face of open doors, insists on keeping their eyes fixed on imaginary bars. It is necessary to understand that this prison is not imposed by external forces, but by the habit of consciousness. The greatest enemy is not a circumstance, nor a person, nor a situation that seems insurmountable. The greatest enemy is the gaze that refuses to change. It is the habit of always observing from the same memories, the same internal narratives, the same wounds. It is like a dusty lens that, when held before the eyes, does not allow new light to pass through. The quantum field can offer new horizons, but the old observer insists on collapsing only what they already know. Here is the truth that liberates. You are not condemned to this cycle. The prison of the old observer is not eternal, but it only dissolves when you decide to change your gaze. When you dare to observe in a different way, the field responds in a different way. But as long as you insist on looking with distrust, with resentment, or with disbelief, reality will continue to obey the command of that gaze. The invitation today is clear. Recognize where the old observer still lives in you. In what areas of your life do you still see with the eyes of repetition? Where do you still believe that it will always be this way? These beliefs are like keys that lock the door of the infinite. But by choosing to observe in a new way, even in silence, even with a small spark of faith, you begin to break the invisible walls. The prison does not resist a renewed gaze. The time has come to break the cycle. The quantum field does not close itself, it awaits you. What keeps you trapped is not the lack of possibilities, but the habit of always observing the same ones. Today, you are summoned to let go of the old gaze, to make room for a new way of perceiving, to recognize that your attention is the portal to other worlds. The universe demands nothing more than a new way of seeing. There is a decisive instant in the journey of every human being, the moment they realize they no longer need to observe the world with the eyes of the past. This instant is the threshold of the quantum awakening. It is the point where you stop being just a victim of repeated circumstances and become a conscious creator of new realities. This awakening is not something distant, reserved for a few enlightened ones, or saved for an uncertain future. It happens now, at the exact moment you decide to observe differently. Quantum awakening is like the chrysalis that finally breaks open. For a long time, the caterpillar believed its reality was to crawl on the ground, live within narrow limits, and feed only on what was before it. But within it, there was already a hidden code, a secret call to flight. When the chrysalis breaks, it is not just the end of an old form, but the emergence of a completely new existence. So it is with you. Within your gaze, there is a dormant code that, when activated, gives birth to a version of yourself that has always been present but hidden. This awakening can also be compared to a star that lights up in the silence of the cosmos. For millennia, it was invisible, unseen, without a sign of its existence. But, at the exact moment, the nucleus awakens, and the light travels through space, illuminating entire constellations. Consciousness awakens like this. Suddenly, what seemed invisible becomes an undeniable brilliance. You discover that you were not lost in a mechanical universe, but connected to a living field, waiting for the instant your consciousness would expand. It is important to understand, awakening is not a future event, something you must prepare for, like someone waiting for a distant train. Awakening is a decision of now. It manifests the instant you change your gaze, the moment you stop repeating the same judgments and choose to see with new eyes. It is the instant you realize that every thought is a creative act, every emotion is a seed thrown into the field, and every silence is an open door to greater possibilities. The quantum awakening of consciousness is also the transition from an old role to a new role. You stop being the prisoner who always observes the same cell and become the architect who chooses new horizons. This transition does not depend on external circumstances. It depends only on how you position yourself before the field. What once seemed impossible begins to move when your gaze changes. It is as if invisible doors opened, not because they were placed on the path now, but because you are finally able to perceive them. This awakening is, in essence, a call to responsibility. For when you understand that the observer creates, you can no longer hide behind the role of victim. You can no longer blame chance, luck, or others. Awakening places you before your true greatness. You are a co-author of reality. You are the being who collapses worlds with your attention. And this truth, although it may seem heavy, is, in fact, liberating. Because if before you believed you were trapped, now you realize that you always had the keys in your hands. Today, you are called to break the chrysalis, to light the star, to awaken consciousness. Do not wait for external signs. Do not wait for life to change to then change your gaze. Change your gaze now, and life will respond. Awakening is not a distant promise. It is a present revelation. It happens here, the instant you decide to be, more than a reflection of the past and assume the role of creator of the now. The profound silence of the universe is not a sterile void, but an invisible womb, a cosmic uterus that holds all possibilities. This is the quantum vacuum, a mysterious field that, to ordinary eyes, seems like nothing, but which in truth contains everything. In it rest the infinite versions of your life, the scenarios not yet lived, the choices not yet made, the futures not yet collapsed. It is as if, beneath the surface of the real, there were a secret ocean, pulsing with latent energy, waiting only for the touch of your consciousness to give birth to new realities. The vacuum is not absence, it is hidden fullness. Just as the earth seems empty before the seed, but in its interior holds the potential of entire gardens, the quantum field is the fertile space where every thought, every emotion, every intention launched can germinate. Imagine it as an invisible garden. In it, the seeds of healing, abundance, love, expansion, and purpose are already ready. But none of them blossom alone. They await the gardener of consciousness. They await the moment when you decide to plant with your gaze, water with faith, and nourish with attention. The vacuum is also the pause between the notes of a song. Without silence, the melody would be just continuous noise. But it is in the empty space between sounds that harmony finds breath, that beauty manifests. In the same way, it is in the silence of the quantum field that new possibilities gain space to emerge. Every time you are silent, every time you stop repeating the mental noises of the past, you open a portal in the vacuum. This portal connects you to realities that have always been available, but invisible to the distracted eye. Many are afraid of the void, as if it were a threat or a loss. But awakening reveals that the void is gestation. The womb is not empty. It is the space where life forms. The vacuum is not nothing. It is the everything not yet revealed. When you allow yourself to rest in this silence, when you dare to trust the invisible, you begin to perceive that there is a presence there, a subtle intelligence, an invisible architect that organizes possibilities in response to your consciousness. The vacuum is the silent temple where the future is molded. By accessing the vacuum, you free yourself from the illusion that only what is visible is real. You discover that the invisible is the true source. It is not external circumstances that create your life, but the hidden field that responds to your gaze. The money you desire, the healing you seek, the opportunity you await, all of this already rests in the vacuum as a living possibility, awaiting only the decision to be observed. The universe is not empty of answers. It is you who are often full of noises that do not allow you to hear them. Allow yourself to imagine that, by closing your eyes, you are before an infinite garden. In the silence, you touch seeds of light, feel the roots of new realities, perceive sprouts that have not yet been born. What you choose to look at will begin to blossom. What you decide to nourish will grow. The vacuum does not impose. It offers. It does not limit. It expands. It does not trap. It liberates. You are invited to enter this field with reverence, like someone entering the womb of the universe, knowing that from there will emerge the miracle of a new life. Today, the vacuum opens before you like a sacred womb. It awaits the seed of your gaze, the decision of your consciousness, the breath of your intention. And when you dare to launch a new vision into this field, the invisible begins to move. The silence transforms into gestation, and the apparent nothingness gives birth to the everything you have always sought. The quantum field is always alive, pulsing with infinite possibilities. But there is a silent law that governs this mystery. Nothing manifests without the conscious gaze of the observer. Not observing is to abdicate power. Observing with intention is to assume the authorship of destiny. It is here that you discover your true identity. You are not just someone who reacts to life, but the invisible architect who draws with thoughts and emotions the structure of the reality you inhabit. Every thought is like a seed thrown into the field. Every emotion is like the water or the sun that makes it germinate. Every intention is a line in the invisible project that sooner or later will become concrete. The architect who does not design their house allows others to decide what it will be like. So it is with life. If you do not observe with consciousness, the field will be filled with noise, old memories, and other people's gazes. But when you decide to observe with clarity, when you project with purpose, the universe organizes itself in response. Imagine yourself before an empty lot. Without a plan, without a project, nothing there will be built beyond improvisations. But the architect who sits down, who draws lines, who imagines the form, is already building. What does not yet exist in the physical world already exists in the invisible. So it is with your life. The instant you decide to look with intention, the collapse begins. The field responds to the invisible design of your consciousness. The invisible is the first foundation, the matrix of everything that will become palpable. This responsibility, at once solemn and liberating, requires vigilance. For if every emotion and thought molds realities, it is necessary to ask, what have you been observing? With what lenses have you been projecting your life? If you observe with fear, you draw narrow walls. If you observe with scarcity, you trace dark corridors. But when you observe with confidence, you create wide windows. When you observe with love, you raise solid pillars. When you observe with gratitude, you open doors to infinite horizons. The conscious architect knows that the quality of the work depends on the quality of the vision. In the quantum field, there is no neutrality. The absence of intention is not fertile silence, but a ground taken over by weeds. When you do not direct your gaze, unconscious patterns take control. Inherited beliefs, unhealed memories, words spoken by others become the architects of your life. But awakening summons you to retake this power. You were not created to live in houses built by others' gazes, but to build the unique temple of your existence. Here is the truth. You are already an architect, whether you like it or not. Your consciousness is already collapsing realities in every instant. The difference is in becoming conscious of this process or not. By awakening, you stop creating by chance and start creating by choice. You stop being a tenant of repeated destinies and assume the role of builder of worlds. And this choice does not happen in the distant tomorrow, but in the now. It is in the present that the line is drawn, that the seed is launched, that the collapse is defined. Today, the field opens before you like a vast fertile ground, awaiting the design of your gaze. You can continue repeating the old plans, or you can dare to create a new architecture. The universe does not resist, it responds. The quantum field is the invisible engineer that builds, with perfection, what you project. But the initial blueprint, the first line, is born from your conscious gaze. There comes a moment when words cease to be just concepts and become a summons. This is the moment when you are called to look within yourself and decide, How do you wish to observe your life from now on? The quantum field is before you, full of possibilities, but what will manifest depends on the gaze you choose to sustain. It is here that consciousness rises like a flame, and the heart stands before a decision that will change everything. Looking with fear imprisons. Looking with distrust closes doors. Looking with resentment perpetuates old pains. But looking with confidence opens horizons. Looking with gratitude expands paths. Looking with faith summons worlds that were still hidden. The difference between prison and freedom is not in what happens outside, but in the way you observe inside. It is the gaze that defines whether you will continue to live in repeated cycles, or if you will dare to inaugurate a new reality. This is the time of quantum awakening, and you are being called now, not tomorrow, not in a distant future, but in this instant. For the field does not wait. It responds immediately. Every thought of yours, every emotion, every word spoken, is already drawing lines of reality. The call is clear. Abandon the eyes of the old observer and choose a renewed gaze. Decide to see not what was, but what can be. Not what limits, but what liberates. Not what closes, but what opens. Feel the solemnity of this moment. It's as if the universe itself were bending in silence, awaiting your choice. The entire field is alive, vibrating, waiting for the command of your consciousness. It is like a calm ocean that, the instant you touch it, begins to ripple in response. The inner calling is not an external voice, not an imposed order. It is the sacred reminder that within you dwells an immeasurable power. The power to decide how you look, and therefore, the power to decide what you create. Today, you are summoned to lift your eyes beyond old memories and fix them on the horizon of the possible. Change begins with a simple but decisive gesture: to observe differently. This is the instant when your life can align with a new frequency. Do not underestimate the strength of a new gaze, for in it lies the key to destiny. Knowledge without practice is lost like water spilled on sand. Therefore, you are now invited to integrate what you have heard so far into concrete experiences, which transform knowledge into lived reality. The quantum field does not respond to abstract theories, but to applied consciousness, to the exercised gaze. They are small gestures made with presence that change entire lines of reality. First practice: conscious silence. Reserve a few minutes of your day to just be in silence, without trying to control thoughts, without seeking immediate results. Just be. In this silence, visualize yourself immersing in the quantum vacuum, like someone entering an ocean of infinite calm. Feel the space between one thought and another. Perceive the fertile void that exists between each breath. In this state, you touch the cosmic womb where new realities begin to form. Second practice: intentional visualization. After the silence, choose a reality you wish to experience. It can be healing, abundance, new paths, or reconciliation. Visualize it not as something distant, but as already present. See yourself living this experience. Feel the emotion of having it. Breathe as if you already inhabit this world. Remember, the field does not distinguish between conscious imagination and physical reality. By visualizing with emotion, you launch living seeds into the invisible garden. Third practice: the internal narrative. Observe the words you repeat to yourself. How many times do you say, "I can't, this never changes, it will always be this way"? Each of these phrases is a command to the field, a line in the invisible project. Consciously replace these narratives. Say, "I am ready for new possibilities. The quantum field opens to me. I choose to look with confidence." These affirmations are not just positive phrases. They are codes of observation that reprogram the line of reality. Fourth practice: the daily gaze. As you walk down the streets, work, or relate to others, notice how you observe. Are you looking with haste, fear, judgment? Or are you looking with attention, openness, and curiosity? Small adjustments to your gaze, repeated every day, have the power to alter your inner frequency. And when your frequency changes, the collapse of reality changes with it. These practices are simple, but profound. Do not underestimate their strength. Every conscious silence is an open door. Every visualization is a seed launched. Every transformed internal narrative is a rewritten code. And every new gaze is an entire universe that rises before you. The invitation is clear. Don't put it off. Choose one of these practices right now and apply it today. The field is not distant. It already responds the instant you decide to observe differently. Practical integration is the path by which the invisible becomes palpable, potential becomes experience, and the quantum becomes life. At the beginning of this journey, you were confronted with a question that seemed like just a paradox. What if your reality didn't exist until the moment you observed it? Now, at the end, this question no longer sounds like a distant enigma, but like a key, for you have understood that every instant of your life is molded by your gaze, that the universe is malleable and responds to the quality of your consciousness. Nothing is completely defined without you. Reality awaits your decision. The observer effect is not a theory confined to laboratories. It is the silent law that guides the rhythm of your own existence. You have already realized that every thought, every emotion, every intention opens or closes doors in the quantum field. You understood that the old observer keeps you trapped in cycles of repetition, but the new gaze awakens unprecedented horizons. You discovered that the vacuum is not empty, but the cosmic womb of new possibilities, where your seeds of consciousness find fertile ground. And you recognize that by observing with intention, you become the architect of reality, the author of your destiny. Now, before you, the field remains open, like a blank canvas awaiting the first color, like an immobile ocean awaiting the first wave, like an invisible garden awaiting the first seed. The question that echoes is simple, but decisive. What will you choose to observe? What reality will you allow to collapse before your eyes? For today, in this instant, the entire universe bends to hear your answer. It is time to summon your consciousness to a commitment. Do not allow the old gaze, loaded with fear or doubt, to continue defining your life. Do not accept being a prisoner of memories and patterns that do not represent who you are. Now, assume the identity of a conscious observer, of an awakened creator, of a quantum architect. Say to yourself in silence or aloud, I choose to observe with confidence. I choose to collapse realities of fullness. I choose to live as a creator. These words are not just declarations. They are seeds thrown into the field that are already beginning to germinate. This is the instant. Not tomorrow, not in a distant future. The collapse happens in the now. You are called to live knowing that every gaze of yours is a portal. Every choice of focus is a line of reality. Every emotion is a code that the universe obeys. There is no neutrality. The field already responds. And you decide, with every breath, which universe will rise before you. And so, the journey ends with a luminous truth. You are the observer and the creator. The instant is now. Final call. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, share this message so that more people may awaken, and comment the word quantum below, affirming your decision to live as a conscious creator of your reality.